Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at MichaelDukesShow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Good morning and welcome to the program. It is the Michael Dukes Show, where we talk about stuff about Alaska, about the state, around the country, around the world, anything that relates to us and can affect us. We like to dive into it and talk about and discuss and fold, spindle, mutilate, whatever. We like to do it all. We like to chit chat every morning, and today is no exception. Coming up today on the program, we're going to be talking with Corey DeAngelis, who, of course, is formerly one of the education experts over from Reason Magazine, and he's kind of moved on to do some other things, but he's got a brand new book out called The Parenting Revolution. And we're going to talk the Parent Revolution. We're going to talk about that here in this hour. Corey's going to be joining us actually a little bit later, and we're going to hold him over through hour two a little bit. And then we're going to pick it up immediately thereafter with Frank Thomaszewski. I know I said Scott Kohlhaas yesterday. That was my bad. I got a ton of people that I'm scheduling, and I messed up. So sorry, I forgot. I got the wrong one. So Frank Thomaszewski is going to be joining us in hour two to talk about his candidacy for reelection up in the interior, a representative up in the interior for the State House. And that will be today's show. Coming up tomorrow on the program is Firearms Friday. And we're actually going to be talking with a pair of entrepreneurs, husband and wife team, that are the new proprietors and purveyors of a company called 907 Ammo. And they've got a very unique deal because they are selling ammunition online in the state of Alaska and delivering it right to your house. Which is kind of a cool deal. So we're going to talk about that tomorrow on Firearms Friday. So we got plenty of stuff laid out for the next couple days, and I hope you stick around with us and join us, and we keep going. We just keep rocking and rolling. All right. So what are we going to talk about in the meanwhile before we get to Corey DeAngelis this morning? Well, first and foremost, I guess. We should give you the highlights and tell you what's happening around the state of Alaska. One of the big things, and somebody in the chat room just asked my dad if it was smoky up in Fairbanks. And what I'm understanding by my friend, cohort, manager of the radio stations up in Fairbanks, Perry Wally, was down here in Anchorage working with me at the two stations down here that we have. And we were talking about just how thick the smoke is getting. Probably not as thick as back in 2007, 2008, when there was 1 million acres burning, but it's close. It's bad. It's bad. There are plenty of wildfires across Alaska. Now they got off to a pretty slow start overall. But according to the Alaska Division of Forestry and Fire Protection, they are now ramping up as of Wednesday. There were 123 active fires burning across the state, accounting for about 133,000 acres already burned. 15 of those fires are being manned, according to BLM. The largest blaze is the McDonald fire, which is burning just south of Fairbanks, hence part of the problem with the Fairbanks air quality. Well, Fairbanks is kind of hemmed in because you've got that one, and then you've got the Elliott fire, which we're going to talk about here in a second. But the McDonald fire, just over 50,000 acres. And they've got a crew of about 85 firefighters working on it. They're protecting a series of cabins down in 5 Mile. But the majority of the fire is on military training lands, and they've elected to allow it to they're just going to let it burn because it's just on military practice and training grounds, and nobody's out there, no cabins, no nothing else, so they're just going to let it burn. They got another fire burning in Katmai, the National Park and Preserve. That's about 3,200 acres as of the 25th, which was 2 days ago. The American Creek fire, along with a smaller fire in the park, the Naknek Lake fire, have no threat to life or property, but they're continuing to do on-site evaluations in all these areas for cabins and lodges and structures and everything else. While those fires are some of the largest in the state, officials have concerns about a much smaller fire, which is the Susitna fire, which is only about an acre in size as of Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, but they're concerned because it's only about an acre in size, but it's not contained as of yesterday morning. So, being the fact that it was so close to Wasilla, they are working crews down from Fairbanks to help. And of course, they're reminding people that while many of the current fires are started by natural, like lightning strikes, etc., a significant number are caused by human-controlled issues that humans caused them. And he's, according to the spokesperson for the Division of Forestry, almost all of our human-caused fires are when people walk away from a campfire or walk away from a debris burn, or don't pay attention to a burn barrel. A spark flies, it goes unnoticed and gets into something flammable, and before you know it, fire is racing across your lawn towards your neighbor's house. So he said they have been doing, in general, it seems like people have been getting the message and being more careful. That's one of the reasons why the current fire season may have gotten off to such a slow start, is that people are paying closer attention. Nothing scarier than fire. I mean, really, I've seen some of those get out of control, and nothing is scarier than fire. But of course, they've also had some other problems. People along the Elliott Highway, milepost 41 to 43, are being told right now to evacuate by the Bureau of Land Management and the Fire Service. The Globe fire is spreading rapidly and now moving towards the highway. They say nearby homes, a native allotment, and a DOT work camp are all being threatened. They deployed six smoke jumpers when the wind shifted east yesterday evening. The fire was first reported on Tuesday, so just 2 days ago. And the coordination center listed the fires being caused by lightning, which was detected by a civilian pilot flying over it. It was estimated to be about 1,300 acres on Wednesday evening and grew to 1,500 acres by Thursday morning, this morning. And so now they're telling people from milepost 41 to 43, get out. Ready, set, go. You are on the go button. Go, go, go. And, of course, high pressure is the source of the hot and dry weather. And there's a ridge of that's stretching across the state that will continue to keep much of the state dry and warm through the weekend. Drier and warmer than normal, actually. And that means the temperatures will stay above normal, especially for the interior. And we'll see what happens. But if you're up on the Elliott Highway, you know somebody up there, they may need help moving out, getting stuff going. 41 through 43 mileposts of the Elliott Highway now calling for full evacuation up there. And I have questions. I have questions about this. There has formed a pro ranked choice voting coalition. I saw this the other day, and it's got the usual suspects that you've come to expect. The Jennifer Johnstons and Chris By, the Libertarian candidates in it, and I figured that because again, many Libertarians are in favor of the whole ranked choice voting thing. And so that's not necessarily surprising. Santa Claus is a member. You've got who else was the one that you got? One of the ones that kind of surprised me was Liesl McGuire, former Republican senator. Liesl McGuire, she's the chair. She's the chair of this committee. That was a little surprising to it. Who else I see? Grace Jang, the former communications director for Bill Walker, was in there. Elias Rojas, who serves as the caucus chair for the LGBTQ stuff for the Alaska Democrats. But what really caught a lot of people's eye on this little mosaic of people who are supporting the vote no on 2 question was I'm sorry, I just lost the name. Republican Jesse Sumner. He's right up there which is weird. Wasilla Republican representative. It's one of the reddest districts in the state, an area that is probably more opposed to ranked choice voting based just anecdotally on people that I've talked to than any other place in the state. And he's thrown his hat into the ring on this and become part of the face of this project. So it's kind of a weird, diverse crew. Now, I know some people would argue, well, that means that it has bipartisan support and that ranked choice voting should be continuing because, look at all the people who probably don't agree on much else are agreeing on this, right? The socialist Santa Claus, who is on the mosaic here as well. He and Jesse Sumner are probably at odds in most things. And, but so it must be good. I don't know. I'm just not buying this whole thing. And I do not know what's going on. Now, interestingly enough, when you actually look at who's supporting this whole initiative, it turns out that this vote no on 2 coalition is being supported by wait for it being supported by Alaskans for Better Elections, which again should not be. This is not a shocking thing for most people to see. And also, where was the I'm sorry, I didn't have the website up. I feel bad now. Let me go to the website here. It was the 5 paid for by the Final Five Fund. The Final Five Fund, which is an organization out of led by Catherine Gell, who is a former food magnate of a food company, but has also been donating to various progressive candidates and causes, and has got several different funds that are all about shaking up how we do business in politics. And so the top 3 contributors to the Final Five Fund, the Alaskans for Better Elections, and Carla Wright of Anchorage, Alaska. Those are the top 3 contributors to the No on 2 thing. But, let's face it, Alaskans for Better Elections received millions of dollars to push this onto the ballot, and I'm assuming that they're collecting millions of dollars getting ready to fight it hard. But the Final Five Fund has also given millions of dollars across the over the years, and the Final Five in this case refers to a ranked choice voting scheme that they pushed in many other states, which was the top 5 vote getters would move on to the general election. In Alaska, it's the top 4, but that's why it's called the Final 5. And Catherine Gell is part of this whole thing, and it's just, it's just so weird. It's just so weird that all these people come together. I mean, and they're totally allowed to do it, but it's interesting to put a name to a face and to understand where people are. So it's interesting. All right, I'm up against the break. I got talking long, so I apologize. We'll jump into it here. We got more coming up. I want to talk a little bit more about this article in Scientific America, which is decrying and warning us of the dangers of homeschooling and why it requires direct government intervention. We'll talk about that here in just a second. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Back with more right after this.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of crazy what we're, all these people who are, have you seen the snapshot of the deal here? Let me, what can I present? I can present, there we go. Share screen. There we go. I got a new feature here that I've been using, and it's, there we go, right there. So that's the screen there, right? I mean, that there it is. There's Jesse Sumner over here on the one side, and you got Chris Bai, and you got Liesl McGuire, Grace Zhang, Grace Zhang, and all these other Jeff Cooks down here. There's Jennifer Johnston. I mean, Santa Claus. We're all support, it's just kind of weird. I mean, people can do what they want with their own money and do all that kind of stuff, but it's just kind of odd when it's all said and done. Anywho, all right. All right, where are we at? 10, what was 10 to phone line, 10 to phone. Kendall's got actual research on home education, which I can't click the link because it's in the chat is an aggregator, so I can't, it doesn't give me hyperlinks, so I'm trying to refresh the, good God almighty, people just can't pay attention to the fact that I'm on the air and they keep banging away at my phone here. There we go. All right. There we go. So a systematic research, the empirical research spokes on school choice. All right. I'll look at that. I haven't seen that link before. Journal of School Choice, demographic characteristics, parent-led homeschool. Oh, this is like a full-on study, research, evidence, methodology, how they're doing it, what they're coming up with. All right. Well, thanks. I'll take a look at that when I have a couple hours, because that's a pretty dense piece of literature there. Thank you, Kendall, for giving us the heads up on that. All right. I'm sorry, I'm closing. I got different things here. Closing the windows. There we go. All right. Boom, boom, boom. Yeah, so we're going to get into this discussion about the homeschooling and everything else. It should be it should be an interesting discussion on that when we look at this, because this is their fear. Their fear is that people is that people should take responsibility for their own families, for their own kids' education and all this kind of stuff. That means they stop listening to the powers that be. And that really, in some ways, just terrifies these people. Because we should listen to the experts. I mean, who are the experts? Sometimes self-appointed, sometimes not. Sometimes with an ulterior motive to, again, prop up the whole line of government thinking that only through the direct benevolent intervention of government can we move forward as a society. It's it's interesting. It's interesting to say the least. All right. Well, we'll take a look at that, Kendall. Thank you for the information there. And we will jump forward here. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We'll be talking with Corey DeAngelis here after this next segment, and we will kick things off with him. Please like it, share, follow, subscribe, ring the bell, blah, 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 all that good, juicy stuff. Get it done, and we'll get more folks involved in the conversation. All right, here we go. Here we go. Jumping back in. I can't even repeat some of what you guys are saying. Let's do it.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Huh. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
Yep. Okay. It's gonna be interesting. It is gonna be an interesting day. All right, let's dive into this. The Scientific American, which is this is one of the leading magazines in the country. They've been published for 170 something years. It's been around for a few days. Published for 178 years is how long the Scientific American has been being published. So it's been here for a while. And so they wrote this op-ed, and it is an op-ed from the editors, an opinion piece from the editors of the magazine. And the headline reads, "Children deserve uniform standards in homeschooling." And it goes on with a subheading of saying, with few states tracking who's being homeschooled and what they're learning, an untold number of U.S. children are at risk of a poor education or even abuse. Gasp. I mean, there's a certain amount of pearl clutching in this article. They show some trepidation and some angst about the fact that parents are pulling their kids out of brick and mortar school, while not even really acknowledging the fact that much of that came from the exposure to what their kids were actually learning during the pandemic. That at-home learning segment of the pandemic exposed a lot of parents to what exactly it was that their kids were actually learning in school. And let's just say that there were many parents who weren't impressed. They were either not impressed with the quality of the education, or they weren't impressed with the curriculum. They didn't like what was being taught. I obviously was not being taught. And so we come to this, and so you saw this outflow in this migration. Well, they let it happen while the schools were closed, right? And of course, who was it that continued to force the school closures to continue? The unions. They were the ones that refused to go back to all the private schools, and everybody else. They were already back at school, and that actually drove even more people out to the homeschooling or some kind of, correspondence school, micro school, teacher share, pandemic pod, whatever it was. And so it's really it's a direct reaction to what was going on. But here they are lamenting the fact that all these people are leaving homeschools or leaving regular schools and going to homeschools. And we don't even know how many because, there's no law that mandates that we inform anybody about anything about homeschooling because it's none of your damn business, first of all. Now, they lay some platitudes out here at the beginning to talk about how homeschoolers have, won national spelling bees. One of the most prolific mathematicians in history was homeschooled. That there are many, well-adjusted, well-rounded individuals who thrive as adults that were homeschooled. But so they throw get all the statistical studies and stuff that shows that homeschoolers are, have a higher, educational aptitude, and they've done better and they've scored better. That homeschoolers are generally speaking better students, adults, well-rounded, the whole deal. They pay lip service to it, and then they say, but others do not receive a meaningful education, and too many have suffered horrific abuse. That's an actual quote. And too many have suffered horrific abuse. The federal government must develop basic standards for safety and quality in education in homeschooling across the country. Well, tell us more about this, because this is the new tact. I'm telling you right now, we saw the John Oliver thing that happened here, and we talked about this a few months ago when John Oliver got up and spewed a bunch of different stuff. And of course, what did he highlight? He didn't highlight the mainstream homeschoolers. He didn't highlight what was happening in the vast majority of homeschoolers. No, he went on to talk about the outliers. Oh, and guess what? So does the Scientific American. Other curricula describe slavery as black immigration or extol the virtues of Nazism. Because there is a group of homeschoolers in, Idaho or something, where their whole curriculum is based on this neo-Nazi. It's a thing, but it's a fraction of the 4 or 5 million students who are being homeschooled. You got less than 100 kids that are being taught by their parents in their little communal, community. But he's acting as if this is mainstream. That slavery was called black immigration and extolling the virtue of Nazism. Okay, but what about the horrific abuse? In the worst cases, homeschooling hides abuse. In 2020, an 11-year-old boy in Michigan was found dead after his stepmother used homeschooling to conceal years of torture. Okay, that's horrific and horrible, and I hope she burns in hell for it, but that's one. Oh, that's okay. They did a small study of children who had been seriously abused, found 8 of the 17 school-age victims were ostensibly being homeschooled. Well, that means 9 were in brick-and-mortar schools. In these cases, homeschooling was a farce, a hole in the children's social safety net for abusers to exploit. You just said it's a study of 17 school-age victims, and 8 of them were homeschooled, and 9 of them were in regular school. And it was a small study. 17 victims out of how many million school-age children? That's not a small study. That's statistically insignificant. I mean, the individual cases of abuse are horrible. I'm not trying. But from a statistic standpoint, are you kidding me? But this is how they do it. They point to these wild, in-your-face, out of the blue, somebody locks their kids in a closet and feeds them through a knothole, says that they're homeschooled, and then they find, bad things do happen, but that it is the rare exception and not the no. I mean, in this case, over half of the survey of the kids who were it was regular school. How many people out there know somebody who was abused by a teacher or a staff member or a janitor or something like that? How many of you in the listening audience know somebody who went to brick and mortar school that faced some form of abuse at the hands of authority in the regular school system? Raise your hand. Not everybody who's around you is looking at you. Raise your hand, though. Oh, so by sending them to school, it's the only approved kind of abuse that we can do. I mean, this is the grasping at straws and the whole thing. The underground nature of homeschooling. This is how they phrase this stuff in this article. It's because we can't get good information because of the underground nature of homeschooling. Like there's something going on here, the underground movement of radicals and revolutionaries. So they keep saying, well, what we need to do is the federal government needs to, they need to step in. Now, usually they leave education issues for the state to decide, but the states just aren't doing it. And then they give an example. This year's Michigan Education Department proposed a registry of homeschool students in the state and was met with fierce pushback. They reversed it. I mean, just gasp. Again, clutching your pearls. Because why? The people didn't want it. The people, is this a government by the people, for the people, or is it you experts at Scientific American who are making the decision for us that they should step in and do it? We should do all these things, but the parents didn't want it, and isn't it a government of the people, by the people? Maybe you guys should have been homeschooled. And then they finish up with education is a basic human right. That's a logical fallacy. I mean, that is so. And in fact, Mustread went over this too, and they had another. Who did they quote from? The Mackinac Center for Public Policy. And this is the interesting point. What doesn't make sense, however, is the editor, Scientific American's argument that the practice of exempting homeschooling students from taking the same types of assessments as their peers in a classroom setting enables education neglect that can have long-lasting consequences for a child's development. This is an unscientific logical fallacy with harmful consequences, including misleading the public about the reality of homeschooling. While neglecting a child's education is certain to have a negative impact on his or her development, exempting a homeschool child from taking standardized assessments is not a form of educational neglect. They also talked about, when these kids aren't required to take assessments, the Mackinac Center said that makes sense since the individualized learning environment afforded to homeschool students lends itself to more flexible and diverse assessment modalities. While standardized tests might be the most efficient way for teachers to measure the content knowledge of a class of 25 students, a written analysis based on a recent visit to a museum might be a more meaningful demonstration of knowledge for a homeschooling student. I mean, this whole... And what do they want us to do? They want us to pass background checks. They should require background checks for all parents because teachers have to do it. They have to submit documents every year proving what you learned. Just no. Just no. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio. Corey DeAngelis up next.
Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
This whole study is, this whole piece is just, there you go. Yeah, in Alaska, says Kendall, we have public school horrific abuses of children in recent history, but Scientific America is unconcerned about those kind of abuse. Again, I mean, 17, a small study of 17 school-age victims, and they found that 8 of the 17 were ostensibly homeschooled. that means that 9 of the 17 were in public school. So it still sounds like it's a better deal because less than half went to public school. I mean, if they were all, it makes no sense. No sense whatsoever. It's pronounced Mackinac. What did I say? I thought I said Mackinac. What did I say? I don't even care. I don't live there. I don't care. What is it? How is it written? How did I read it? Now I'm confused. Where is it? Mackinac Center for it's spelled Mackinac, and how is it pronounced? Mackinac. Okay. Well, then they should freaking spell it Mackinac. I mean, come on, I drive a Chevrolet. What do you want? Mackinac. Why? How are you even getting? I mean, I'm not one to criticize somebody's language, but how do you get Mackinac? I suppose the C is silent. Is it like the C is silent, like the T is silent in Chevrolet? Is it a French thing? I mean, what is even the word? Now I'm interested in the word origins of this. Mackinac is actually Mackinac. Interesting. There you go. I'm interested to know. Richard says they are attacking homeschooling because they're pissed at the opportunity to indoctrinate and abuse federal funding. They're still beyond their jurisdiction, sticking their nose in parents' business as to how they educate their children. Public schools are garbage and churning out low-level future adults, and every parent has a right not to waste their kid's life in the system. Yes. We strive to meet minimum standards. Okay. Applies government. Mackinac Dukes was homeschooled. It is French. It is French. So the C and the T's are silence. Did you wash your face this morning? It's French. Mackinac. I don't know. I mean, it's interesting. I swear I have seen Mackinac actually written with a W. And is there a different place it's called Mackinac that has it actually written with a W? I'm curious. Climate Chippewa. It's Chippewa language, says Frank Banks. There's a lot of foreign named places that are Americanized by locals. Mackinac. Mackinac.org. Janice works there. Mackinac. Mackinac.org. I mean, again, it's cool to see how some of that stuff plays out. But obviously, I wasn't homeschooled, because if I was homeschooled, I'd know that, right? Oh, man. My head's going to explode over something like that. All right. Oh, my. I just looked in the green room, and Mr. DeAngelis is scarfing down my virtual donuts and virtual coffee. What the heck, man? Save some for me. Let's go over there and check it out. See what's happening. We'll get Corey DeAngelis on the program this morning. Hello, my friend. How are you doing today?
Hey, doing well. How about you?
Not a single complaint. It's a beautiful sunny day, or going to be, and we're just there's no snow on the ground. That's all I could say. It's a plus for us. How about yourself? You're a busy man, traveling all over the country.
Been traveling a lot. Yeah, and new book just came out, The Parent Revolution, Rescuing Your Kids from the Radicals Ruining Our Schools. It's available on Amazon right now, 25% off, but Trump endorsed the book. It's a national bestseller. And if you want to take Senator Ted Cruz's advice, on the back he says, quote, "You can ruin Randy Weingarten's day by reading this book." I actually dedicated it to her. She's the boss of the teachers union, and they've overplayed their hand.
Yeah, we've had a lot of discussion about Randy and her shenanigans around here. All right, well, we are coming up here out of the commercial break. It's just you and me and 50 of our closest friends on Facebook and YouTube right now. but we're about 60 seconds out from rejoining the radio, and then we can get things kicked off here and get things going on. Let's get started.
Sweet.
Public enema number one. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number one, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke Show.
As lies. I'm not. I'm a perfect angel. That's exactly what I am. Welcome back to the Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking stuff. It's what we do. We're joined this morning by Corey DeAngelis, who, of course, we know from his tenure back at Reason Magazine, and Reason Foundation, rather, as an education expert. Of course, he's also written some other stuff and books, and now he's got a brand new book out called The Parent Revolution. And this is a book that, it's basically Ted Cruz says, if you want to ruin Randy Weingartner's day, just buy and read this book. Corey DeAngelis, Corey, you're just joining us now, but we're just coming off this discussion about the Scientific American op-ed. I mean, I just tore it to pieces, but we'll get your take on that. So tell us how you've been doing. Tell us a little bit about the book and what's going on.
Yeah, it's The Parent Revolution, rescuing your kids from the radicals ruining our schools. It's got a lot of endorsements, including from former President Donald Trump, and it's now a national bestseller. And I'll actually be in Anchorage, Alaska on July 8th at 5 p.m. at the lakefront. And the first 100 people there will get a copy of the book signed for free. So 5 p.m. in Anchorage, Alaska, July 8th at the lakefront. So, yeah, I've been traveling a lot and promoting the book, and it's been doing really well. I did send a copy to Randy Weingarten herself, and I don't think she was really happy about it. I sent a copy to Stacey Davis Gates, the head of the Chicago Teachers Union. She's the same lady that called school choice racist last year, and then we found out she sends her own kid to private school. I mean, it's total hypocrisy. She sent the book back to me. I guess it was above her reading level or something. But she actually went out of the way to send the book back, paid for the return shipping and everything. And I know they got it. It wasn't that it went to the wrong address. I had them sign for it, and I had the receipts showing that they did receive it at the Chicago Teachers Union office, and someone signed for it. So some teachers union boss in Wisconsin also called to burn the book. So if they want to burn it, it's probably a good idea to get it. The same people calling us the book banners, they actually call to burn ideas that they disagree with. Total hypocrites.
I mean, there's no hypocrisy here at all. Just pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. This book, of course, came out of. Has this been brewing for a while? Did this come out of the controversy and the breaking of the shackles of COVID when people discovered that they'd been lied to all this time? That homeschooling and teaching your own kids wasn't nearly as hard as they had been told all these years. I mean, where did this come from?
That's right. I dedicated the book to Randy Weingarten and the teachers unions for overplaying their hand, awakening a sleeping giant, parents, and inadvertently doing more to advance school choice and homeschooling than anyone could have ever imagined. We've had 12 states pass universal school choice in the past 3 years alone. In 2020, we had 0 states with Milton Friedman's vision of universal school choice playing out. And so in the past 3 years, we've seen more advancements on school choice than in the preceding 3 decades. And that's the union's own fault. When they fought to keep the schools closed as long as possible, they were holding children's education hostage for ransom payments from taxpayers. They got billions of dollars in COVID relief since March of 2020, $190 billion actually, which was more than the U.S. dedicated to rebuild Europe after World War II and the Marshall Plan, even in real terms. It's a ton of money we threw at the problem. The definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. And the unions knew they could leverage those closures and say, we're closed because we need more money. It was a hostage-taking scenario. And the good news is families got to see what was happening in the classroom through remote learning, which we really should have just called it remotely learning. There wasn't a lot of learning going on. There's been decades of learning loss over the past few years, partially caused by the union-induced school closures. And now families are pissed. And they heard for a long time that if you're not happy with what you're getting, the unions would tell families that, well, we're democratically accountable. You can show up at the school board meetings. We'll listen to you. Well, we saw how that worked out. They only wanted to listen to us if we agreed with them. But the second they understood that we did not agree with what was happening in the school system, they started to cut off parents' mics. They also mobilized the FBI, which created a threat tag to bully and silence parents into submission. The National School Boards Association sent a letter to Biden implying that under the Patriot Act of all things, parents should be investigated for quote unquote domestic terrorism. That was an attempt to bully and silence parents into submission. A lot of people remember that letter, but they don't remember the earlier draft that was uncovered, finding that they actually called in earlier drafts of the NSBA letter for the military and the National Guard to be deployed to school board meetings to tell parents to sit down and shut up. Well, parents started to see, well, maybe we need more power in this relationship. And what better way to do that than to have the money follow the child? Now we have 12 red states with universal school choice, and it's a beautiful thing to see. And the elections are going really well for school choice supporters too.
Yeah, no, it was shocking. I mean, I've often said that one of the few silver linings out of the pandemic was people's eyes were completely opened on the whole educational front. That did more to bolster the whole, self-taught, homeschooling, microschool, alternative learning program movement than anything else that I've ever seen. That and remote work. I mean, those two things are the few silver linings that came out of the pandemic. People learned a lot. Greg's right in chat room. Greg says people learned a lot about government in overreach in 2022 at many levels. And I think this was just happened to be one of the big ones. It's not even, it's in some cases, I think it's even worse than what you're talking about, Corey. They weren't even hiding it in some places. The LA Unified School District basically said in their demand letter to the government that unless they had social justice worked into whatever was going on, they weren't going to go back to school. I mean, it was literal hostage. It had nothing to do. Where's the kids? What about the education of the kids? What about? No. We're talking about teachers' pay and social justice. And if we don't get it, we riot. I mean, that's kind of what it came down to.
I mean, Michael, we knew they were going to call for more money, but they also included all this socialist garbage to be included in their reopening plans. They called for Medicare for all, a wealth tax, police-free schools, things that had zero to do with reopening the schools. It was a hostage-taking scenario. That was in LA. Chicago, they were doing interpretive dance videos to protest going back to work. Meanwhile, their board member was caught vacationing in Puerto Rico, thousands of miles away, while saying it was too dangerous to go back to work, but they could go travel the country and go on vacation. In LA, in a private Facebook group, they were telling their union members, well, if you go on vacation, fine. Just don't post about it on social media. They knew that they were hypocrites. They knew that there was going to be backlash, and they knew that what they were doing was wrong. In Chicago, they also deleted a tweet saying, quote, "The push to reopen schools is rooted in, you guessed it, sexism, racism, and misogyny." They threw every radical leftist buzzword at the wall to see what would stick. And it really just goes to show you that they did not care about the kids. And it's because they didn't have to. There was no incentive to do so. They didn't have school choice to a large degree during the COVID era. But that is what has all of these missteps by the union, them stepping in over and over. I mean, Randy Weingarten, a couple of years ago, I woke up to what I thought was a headline from a Babylon Bee article. It wasn't. It was actually a tweet by Randy Weingarten herself. And she said that she was in Ukraine, of all places, at the front lines, quote, to assess the situation. What the hell was the teachers union boss doing in Ukraine? What was she going to do? Make the war go remote like she did with our schools? That might actually help. But having the Ukrainian kids already suffered enough. She already ruined our schools. She left there at the same time that the union, the nation's report card scores came out, finding decades of learning loss that were partially caused by her union-induced school closures. But because they've been so drunk on power for so long, they can't backpedal. They're just leaning into their anti-parent rhetoric, and that is leading parents to look for change. And the parents are beating the unions at their own game. They can mobilize and care about their kids more than anybody else. And they are holding politicians accountable at the ballot box. We saw this with Terry McAuliffe in Virginia in
Yeah, the
2021.
Youngkin McAuliffe, yeah.
And Youngkin won on the issue of education after Terry said, I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach at the final debate. Parents were pissed. That was the number 2 issue in the election. And Youngkin won with education voters by 6 points, laying out a blueprint for success for Republicans going forward.
Yeah, this is the crazy world we live in right now. The parent revolution. What does it lay out? What does it go over for us? Give us kind of a synopsis here of what it covers and why. I mean, I want to read it just to piss off Randy Weingarten, but I mean, tell me what it covers so that we kind of have an idea what it's about.
Yeah, it goes over the dark times of COVID and reminders of how crazy it was. There are stories that you might have forgotten about or things that you had never even heard about. In Sacramento County, for example, in California, there was a ridiculous so-called health order that had nothing to do with health. It was everything to do with politics and power. It arbitrarily closed the schools, but not the daycares, because COVID was smart, right? It knew if you were learning something in the same building, then it was going to get you. But if you were just sitting there getting watched by an adult and you weren't learning anything, somehow COVID would deactivate, I guess. I mean, it was the same thing with restaurants. I was living in D.C. at the time. I now live in San Antonio, Texas, where I grew up. But in D.C., I'm sure there was a lot of other states that had this ridiculous health order too that, again, had nothing to do with health. But in the restaurants, when you were walking to the table, COVID would get you, because I guess it was like flying around up here. So when you were walking to your table at the restaurant, you had to have your mask on. But once you sat down, I guess COVID, since it was up there and it wasn't down here, you were fine. You could take your mask off in the restaurant. So that didn't make any sense. But in Sacramento County, where they were closing the schools but not the daycares, there was a private Christian school that rebranded itself as a daycare. Aha! They retrained all of their employees as daycare workers. They're like, those schools, those are dangerous things. We're getting out of the schooling business. We're a daycare. Yeah, we do education on the side. But the health official was not really happy about that. But it just goes to show you that the private sector, they came up with ingenious ways to get around ridiculous health mandates when it came to COVID. And the government sector, they celebrated the closures because they knew they could keep the same revenues going in, keep their job security and pay, but it was worse than that. They knew that they could actually profit from the closures in the government sector because they could use that as leverage for more money in negotiations and then also for their socialist pet projects.
Yeah. Corey DeAngelis is our guest. We're going to continue with him on the other side. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show continues. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Don't forget, Corey's going to be here in July on the 8th. We'll talk more about that on the other side. All right. They're in the top of the hour news right now for the radio stations. And so we're going to continue on here. Just chit-chatting with Corey DeAngelis. I don't want to retread anything when we get back. So what have you been doing, Corey? It's been a while. I mean, it's been it's been a hot minute since you've been on.
Yeah. I'm joining the parent revolution on the front lines. Baby Angelina's on the way in 5.5 weeks. So that's going to be a big change. I'm not going to be able to travel as much, obviously, at least in the short term.
Yeah.
But I'm excited about it. And if you thought I was amped up on school choice before, just wait until you see I'm going Super Saiyan as a dad. So
that's some great stuff. Tell us a little bit about because again, I guess we haven't talked. Did we talk after COVID or before COVID? I can't even remember. Must have
been during.
It may have been during. You were working at the Reason Foundation at the time, so that was what's happened since then, I guess.
Now I'm full-time at the American Federation for Children. We're a nationwide school choice advocacy group. We have a C3, C4 PAC. We get involved in elections, and we're winning. We're winning so much I'm almost getting tired of winning. I could talk about this on the other side, but in Texas, for example, there were 21 so-called Republicans that voted with all the Democrats against school choice last year in the House after the bill already passed the Senate. And 14 of them are gone. 14 of those incumbents are gone now that the primary elections happened.
Right. These
And
were
it's
the rural Republicans. Is that correct? They were the ones that were kind of
yes,
fighting
you
against.
can't tell me rural Republicans don't support school choice anymore because the rural voters held these guys accountable. I mean,
Good.
Glenn
Good.
Rogers, for example, an incumbent, lost by 27 points in the primaries as an incumbent. That never happens.
No. No.
And so, like, the voters, it ultimately came down to them, and this was the main dividing line in all these races, was school choice. And now, for the first time in Texas House history, we have the votes for school choice. We picked up 14 votes in the primaries alone.
Yeah, I was reading some of the justification that some of these rural Republicans were having with some of this, and I'm just like, what planet are you guys living on? That this is
It's a repackage of the teachers union talking points. I mean, they just say it in a different way, but
Yeah.
these were the same guys endorsed by the NEA already. I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
they
We've got a
were
few
not.
of those here. We got a few of those here in Alaska that run with the elephant on their lapel, but they're being, their campaigns are being fully funded by the NEA, and it's
Yep.
all about education. I don't know if you've been following the debate in Alaska at all, but
Yeah, with the court case and everything with the
yeah,
correspondence schools. Yep.
we'll talk about that here as well when we get done talking about the book and your visit. But I mean, and of course, not just that, but the fact that, we just haven't been funding education. You heard that, right? We haven't been, we've our education funding has been flat and stagnant.
Oh,
And
BS.
our kids need more. That's, I mean,
It's
and the news
it's
media,
always the answer there, and then nobody fact checks them on this.
no,
But
they just
in
eat it
real
up.
terms, it's ballooned. It's
Yeah.
tripled since 1970. It's insane.
Well, it's one of those things where it's the nugget of truth that's wrapped around a lie is wrapped around a nugget of truth. The nugget of truth is, we haven't seen an increase since 2017. Well, you're right. They haven't increased the BSA since 2017, but in those 7 years, 5 of those 7 years, they spent an additional $10 to $50 million outside the BSA.
Yeah, that's what they do in Texas too. They talk about the formula funding, but then they don't talk about how billions of dollars are still being allocated. They just
outside the formula, right?
And they know people don't think about like all of these little intricacies about you. What you should talk about is what is total funding per student over time. That way you can't weasel. I mean, every state likes to pretend they're last in education funding. I mean, Pennsylvania has done this, and they'll just look at, and they spend like top 10 in the country, Pennsylvania, easily. And they say, oh, well, the state portion hasn't gone up. But what about the local dollars and the federal dollars? You're going to act like that doesn't exist. And every state tries to be like the unions in every state try to figure out a way to make their ranking lower. So you have everybody in 50th in place in education funding somehow.
Because we need more. Because if only we had more money, we could, it's insane. Well, congratulations. And it is called, what's the organization again? American
Federation for Children.
For Children. Okay, good. Well, we'll talk a little bit about that when we get back as well. But yeah, it's the frustrating thing here in Alaska is to watch just kind of the lies and the hypocrisy just roll right out of the mainstream media, the paper of record for Anchorage and all these other. And I'm just like, have you guys even bothered to look at the chart that shows? I mean, I'm not a college graduate, but I could say, what was the bottom line education number 20 years ago? And what is it today? What were the number of students then? What are the number of students today? That's pretty easy math.
Yes,
And
exactly.
We didn't get an increase. We had a 35% increase in 18 years. You're telling me we got no increase? Well, we got to adjust it for inflation and everything. Oh, okay. Let me pull out my slide rule here. We'll do that for you.
Well, even after you adjust it for inflation, it's way higher than. It's just insane how much money. Isn't it like $20,000 per kid in Alaska now?
$20,000 per kid in Alaska.
It's insane.
Yeah. And that's where we're at right here. All right. Well, we're about to rejoin, and then at 20 after, I'm going to kick you to the curb. I know you got to go, so we're going to jump here. But we're about 60 seconds out, so we'll rejoin the radio. And then we'll start off with your book, talking a little bit more, just finishing up the book, talk about your visit, what you're doing here with your visit. And then we'll talk a little bit more about the politics of Alaska and your thoughts on the court case and things like that as we continue to go through. So,
Sweet.
Corey, Corey DeAngelis is our guest. I'm going to pull him back in the green room for just a second here as we get ready to do the top of the hour buzz, and we'll get things going. Folks, please like and share, like and follow, subscribe, ring the bell. Let's do all the YouTube and Facebook stuff. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio. Here we go.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at MichaelDukesShow.com and across the state of Alaska on this your favorite radio station and or FEM translator. Welcome back to the program. Hour 2 of the big radio show for this Thursday edition. We are continuing now with Corey DeAngelis, who is the author of the book, The Parent Revolution, also with the American Federation of Children, who are out there trying to protect our schooling rights across the country. We'll talk about that here in just a second. Let's continue with Corey here. We were just talking a bit about his book, what it goes over, what it delineates, and then we also want to talk about the fact that he's going to be in Anchorage here in just a handful of days, and we'll talk about that real quick. But Corey, to finish up, again, the Parent Revolution, is it kind of a synopsis? Is it a how-to? I mean, give us a little bit more detail here.
Yeah, it's a story about how moms and dads are winning now. We're winning so much, I'm almost getting tired of winning, Michael. We've had 12 states pass universal school choice in the past 3 years alone. We've had some Supreme Court victories in the past 5 years or so. And the elections are going really well for school choice advocates too. So I talked about Terry McAuliffe earlier, but also in my home state of Texas, there were 21 so-called Republicans who voted with all the Democrats against school choice last year after it already passed the Senate. And after the primaries, 14 of those guys are gone. 14 are gone, which basically never happens. Incumbents usually win their reelection 95% of the time. And so that was a political earthquake that rocked Texas and Tennessee. 10 of the Republicans running for House were either endorsed or funded by the teachers union. And out of the 10, 9 of them lost. 9 of them lost. And so this has been a trend in the right direction. It's becoming a political winner, not just the right thing to do. Right. And after that letter was sent to the from the National School Boards Association to Biden to investigate parents as domestic terrorists, 26 states have left the National School Boards Association. So parents, when they lock arms, band together, they can become a political juggernaut, a political force to be reckoned with. And so it's a story of hope, too. It has a lot of examples of where we are winning on the issue. It's mostly red states right now, but I detail in Chapter 4 something I call the red state strategy that will lead to, quote, bipartisanship through hyperpartisanship. And that theory is that the more that the GOP leans into parental rights as a political winner, the more it becomes politically disastrous for Democrats to oppose it. That gives incentives for even Democrats to come along at some point. And we're seeing some of these things play out right now with Josh Shapiro in Pennsylvania, a Democrat governor. Actually, he changed his education platform right before his election in 2022 to include private school choice. He went on Fox News last year reiterating his support. And so the politicians are starting to read the tea leaves from both parties, and that'll be good news for families in the end, regardless of the reason, whether they had a true change of heart or not.
No, and I agree. And it goes hand in glove again with the eye-opening effect of what the pandemic did for the parents. I mean, I think a lot of parents had no idea, and then they walked behind their kid one day while the kid's on the little iPad, and the teacher said, "What?" And it was shocking. Or maybe it was just that they saw how easy it was with remote learning and things like this, and they thought, well, I can do this. This is not that hard. What's going on? And I think that, again, is the silver lining, and I love to see it. And you're right, more parental responsibility, more choice to do what we need to do with our families is the thing that every party should embrace, because that's what people want. That's what they respond to. Now, the 8th of July, you're going to be down in Anchorage at the lakefront, which is over on Spenard, and you're just doing a meet and greet. Is it a thing? Are you up here to highlight anything? You going on vacation? What's happening here?
Oh, I wish I was on vacation. I would like to stay in Anchorage longer, but I'm joining the parent revolution on the front lines in just 5 or 6 weeks. So I'm going to get in there and get out as fast as possible to get back to my wife at home. So, but I will be there from 5 to 8 p.m. on July 8th on Monday at the lakefront Anchorage in Anchorage, Alaska. So the first 100 people that attend the event will get a signed copy of the book for free. So it's hosted by AFP Alaska, and it should be a lot of fun.
Okay, Americans for Prosperity Alaska hosting the event. Again, lakefront, 4800 Spenard is where that's at, and it'll be at 8 p.m. Is that right? No, what?
5 to 8 p.m.
5 to 8 p.m. Okay, 5 to 8 p.m. On Monday the 8th. All right, well, that'll be good. After the long holiday weekend, you get a chance to come by and see him and say hi. I'll probably swing by. I'll actually be in Anchorage on Monday. So we'll do that. You've been following kind of what's been going on in Alaska here. We got about 8 minutes or so, 6, 7, 8 minutes. Alaska, we had this whole argument this whole year about how we needed to up our BSA, base student allocation formula, from 600 to 1,400, which failed. But of course, that was the argument. And then in the midst of all that argument in the legislature about how we're just not funding education properly, we had a judge that ruled in a case brought by the teachers union and some education industry people against the homeschooling and allotment program in Alaska. And he has ruled the whole thing unconstitutional. Every part about it, everything about it. And that, of course, threw a panic in even some legislators who are very much progressive, pro school. They were like, well, what do we do? This is 22,000 students. This will cost us $300 million to put these students into regular school. They were freaking out because, sometimes the dog chases the car. What are you going to do when you catch it? And that's what happened here. Give me your thoughts on what you saw.
Look, we've been winning at the Supreme Court of the United States on these issues, so hopefully it gets taken up at the U.S. Supreme Court, because Alaska has what we call a Blaine Amendment. About 30 or so states have these Blaine Amendments. They were rooted in anti-Catholic bigotry. And the U.S. Supreme Court takes precedence over the state court decision, so we'll see what happens. I'm not sure where it is in the process with it getting taken up, but we've had 2 other victories in the past 5 or so years. In 2020, we had the Espinoza v. Montana decision out of Montana, and we also had in 2022 the Carson v. Macon case out of Maine, which both had to deal with Blaine amendments. So basically, the Blaine amendments have been struck a mortal blow at the U.S. Supreme Court level, and hopefully that continues in that direction. It's hard I don't have a crystal ball to see exactly what will happen,
right.
But
it's
the money should follow the child. And look, other people have said that, that there's a separation of church and state issue with school choice, but there is the words separation of church and state are not in the U.S. Constitution. They're talking about the Establishment Clause. And how does school choice establish a state religion? It doesn't. It's just a ridiculous line of reasoning. And it doesn't violate the Establishment Clause for the same reason that Pell Grants and pre-K programs don't violate the Establishment Clause. No one has a problem with Pell Grants and pre-K programs, college scholarships and pre-K scholarships. Only when it comes to K-12 education do they pretend like there's some issue with the separation of church and state.
Right.
There's not. I mean, the primary beneficiaries are the families. Same thing with the Alaska initiative, and you can choose among religious and non-religious providers. That the
Well, we got
primary.
the yeah, and we've got a similar thing with the Alaska Performance Scholarship Fund where it can be
That's
used to go to
fine.
colleges
Yep.
and all this. I mean, again, it's a ridiculous thing, and then say, "Oh, it's public monies." Well, but it's public monies that came from private
Yeah.
citizens.
There's no such thing as public money. It's taxpayer dollars.
That's exactly it. I mean, this is not rocket science. And by the way, the studies show that when you do force them to compete, things get better for everyone because now you have again a lower class size in these public schools where the kids have left, so that gives the teachers more opportunity to teach them directly. So I mean, there's a benefit for everybody, and but there's been a fight. Yeah, I think you were the first person that talked with us about backpack funding, and now we're seeing that again crop up. It's not called that in some states, but it's basically the idea and the concept that the money follows the child. The ESAs in Arizona has been fighting. We talked with Aaron Smith from
Yep.
Reason here last week about that. I mean, there's a lot of issue. We need to incorporate that here into Alaska. But I think you're right. I think we're going to have to overcome the Blaine Amendment problem before we're able to really do that here.
Well, I'd say pass it and then deal with the Blaine Amendment problem later. I mean, the thing is, they do this in every state. Once you win in the legislature, the teachers unions will come at you in the courts. They'll come at you at the ballot. So it's nothing that's unique to the Alaska Constitution that's preventing this from happening. They will do everything they can to try to stop you, to protect their monopoly at the expense of children and their families. It's a sickening thing. We saw this in Alaska during COVID too. They fought against the Florida virtual school that was doing a good job for decades. The teachers union in Alaska fought to not allow families to access the Alaska families to access the Florida virtual school. But that's just an aside. It just goes to show you they care about their they protecting the monopoly above anything else. But in 30 states or so now, we have some form of private school choice, and they all have education clauses in their constitution. But every other state will act like in Texas. They'll say, "Oh, well, we have an education clause that says we have to have a public school system in Texas. Therefore, we can't have school choice." Hold on. All states have an education clause in their constitution, and having a choice does not get rid of the public school system. So they'll just make up arguments.
Right.
And they know that sometimes judges are activists too, and they're just as much, if not more, political than legislators. And they'll just rule based on how they want, as opposed to what the
Hey,
text actually says.
You've been talking to the Alaska Supreme Court again?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're going to see. But I think, Alaska has been on the front lines and the leading edge of homeschooling for decades. We've always done more, mostly because of our independent spirit and our geography. But I think we will continue to do so. And this is just a bump in the road, and we'll get beyond this, and it'll be good. Final thoughts, Corey DeAngelis. And, of course, where can people find you? I know it's at Corey or DeAngelis Corey, but do you have a website? You got anything else going on where you need people to go see what we need to do?
Yeah, it's at DeAngelis Corey on Twitter, now X. But if you want to support my work, get the book, The Parent Revolution, Rescuing Your Kids from the Radicals Ruining Our Schools. I believe it's 25% off on Amazon right now. Get it while it's hot. It's a national bestseller endorsed by Trump and many others. And come see me July 8th from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. at the Lakefront Anchorage.
All right, we'll do it. Thank you, Corey DeAngelis. As always, it's great to talk with you. Thank you for coming on board. Good luck. Good luck with the baby. If I probably see you on the 8th, but if I don't see you, good luck with the new baby girl. I love it. All right. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, folks, that's us. We're out of time. We got more coming up. Frank Thomaszewski will be up in the next segment. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio.
Running on 100% pure coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Ha, nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay. I see a comment. To make what? To make schools private businesses like prisons is not the way to go. It's interesting that you put schools and prisons in the same sentence in that way. I have thoughts about that. But nobody's saying turn schools into private businesses like prisons. That's not what they're saying, Susan. That's not what... I don't think you understood what the whole... I don't think you understood that. All right. Let's check in with Frank here and get squared away and get stuff rolling. Hello, my friend. How are you this morning?
Good morning, Michael. Great to be here. Thank you.
Well, thanks for coming on board and joining us. You all ready to dive into this thing and get rocking and rolling?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. All right. Well, we will. I'm gonna pull you back into the green room real quick for just a second because I got a whole bunch of comments to go through, and then I'll be right back to you. Okay. So
Sounds
get
good.
a cup of Joe, relax, and we'll be right back with you here. Frank Thomszewski, our guest here on the program in just one hot second. Okay. Bet your perspective change. Oh, Harold says that when Corey has a kid, his perspective will change because I'm sure he hasn't considered his perspective at this point. Not until he has a child. Then he'll automatically become a liberal. I mean, really. Oh, you are a conundrum wrapped into an enigma. All right. Let's see what else. There's other comments in here. Boy, there's a whole bunch of comments about COVID that none of it mattered here. None of that mattered. Wow. You guys are still just going on and on and on about COVID. It's who cares at this point? It's over. I mean, it's still there, but it's the There's a new sub show, Harold Against Facts. Ooh, Isle of Skye last night. 30 years old. Oof. I am jealous. Absolutely jealous. That is delicious. Okay. There was a whole lot of comments that basically it's all sound and thunder signifying nothing. A lot of comments that were just like, why do you guys argue with him? Because it's just, wow. All right. It's over, except it changed education, said Jeannie. You're right. You're right about that. Yeah, no, you're right. 100% right. Again, one of the silver linings is that we became, you became very, very aware of what was going on in our educational system at that point. All right. I can't even with you, man. I just can't even with you. Yes, Terry got it. Terry got the implication of what I was saying. There we go. All right. We are 1 minute out. I think that covers all the comments that we're good to go. Donna says good morning to Representative Thomaszewski. And she said goodbye to Corey, but we didn't see that before Corey left. So we'll do that here. All right. Let me pull Representative Frank back up and we will get things rolling and be ready to go. We are 40 seconds out. So please like, share, subscribe, ring the bell, do all the get more people involved. Thumbs up. There you go, Tom. You just hit the thumbs up. That's what Frank does for us here. Whatever we need to do, make it happen. Let's continue. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio, state business now, 100% till the end of the show. Let's get to it and get cranking on it, shall we? Again, don't forget to check us out on Spotify if you haven't subscribed for the podcast yet either. All you got to do is once you subscribe, it automatically downloads it to your phone. So it's the only time you could tell me what to do. Play now. Here we go.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry, not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Whew, I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
Okay. We're continuing now, changing gears, moving over from education. We're talking about state business. Joining us on the program right now, Representative Frank Thomaszewski, who is in House District, I screw this up every time, 34. Thank you, Frank. 34. I mean, it used to be a different district number, and I'm still trying to remember them. It's been almost 2 years, and I still have a hard time. Used to be numbered from the top of the state to the bottom of the state, and then they reverse it, and you get all confused, and it's all what it is. So Representative Frank Thomaszewski joins us, of course, candidate for re-election. We haven't had a chance to talk to Frank in quite a while. And in fact, I only think we touched base with him once during the session. And so I guess this is the chance for the recap and then ask him why exactly he's decided, what kind of insane in the brain thing makes him want to actually go back to that madhouse. He joins us now. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Very good, Michael. Thank you for having me. It's another beautiful day here in Fairbanks. Of course, we got a little smoke, but with those 80-degree weather days in Fairbanks, with the dryness of the climate here in today, you're going to have smoke. So we've got the fires, we got the smoke, but that's just part of living in the beautiful land of Fairbanks.
Well, again, that's more power to you, my friend. I remember the fire, the haystack, the million-acre haystack fire of whatever it was, 07, 08, when you could just you couldn't get away from it. It's definitely, it's not the summers that I remember. There'd be smoky summers sometimes, but it seems like we got a lot more than we used to. But again, it's not snowing and it's not 50 below. I'll take it. It's not snowing, not 50 below. Frank, so let's talk a little bit here about this last session. Being in the House majority obviously probably felt good, being in the majority side of things for once, because, the House had been the coalition or the Republicans have been kind of the redheaded stepchildren there for a couple of years. So to be in the majority probably felt pretty good, but still an uphill battle. Of course, the big things that they were always talking about, education, we just don't have enough. Defined benefits, we just don't have enough. Energy, we just don't have enough. It's all these things that they kept fighting on. But of course, the budget, the PFD. Give me your synopsis and your hot take on what you saw in the legislature, the wins and the losses, the pros, the cons. Give me a rundown here.
Boy, that's a big question, Michael. How long do you have?
Yeah. Well, let's break it down. Let's break it down on the overall. Let's talk about education, because we just finished up with Corey DeAngelis. That seems like a major segue. So the educational component, you guys worked hard to get through SB 140 from the very beginning. You said you wanted to take it. You wanted to get it done. You got it done quickly. You got it back over, and then it all blew apart. So talk to me about education in the House this last session.
So yeah, we did. We hit the ground running. We did focus on education. It was a big priority for a lot of folks in the legislature in the state, and it really highlighted, the SB 140 really highlighted what our caucus was and in the makeup of it. So we had a majority caucus, but it really wasn't a majority. When you have a very slim margin, basically anyone has a veto on anything that happens. And when we went to bring 140 up, we had it modified and changed to add a few things in there that the governor wanted to have in there, and we couldn't even bring SB 140 in its form onto the floor, right? So right. The CS was not adopted, right? We went in there thinking that we were adopting this, and we got a flat slap across the face saying, no, you're not going to get that CS. So right away, as soon as we brought this education package, we got into the situation where we didn't have a majority at that point.
Yeah, that kind of brings you right up short when you realize that the majority that you thought, I don't think anybody necessarily thought it was bulletproof, but you thought it was at least strong enough to survive this. And the first test, it comes completely apart. And you're like, well, okay, I guess we could see how this is going to go. And of course, then we continued to matriculate through here with all this brouhaha about how we haven't been funding education. We haven't increased education. We haven't done, which is a lie, and I don't know how to say it any nicer than that, Frank. I mean, we've been paying up and above the last 7 years of the BSA. 5 of the last 7 years we've paid outside the formula, a 10 to 20 to $50 million a year beyond that. And so at some point you got to be like, how much is too much? I mean, how much money is what is the right amount? And oh, by the way, if we give you more, can we also ask for some accountability for it? No, we just want the money. No accountability. It's kind of frustrating to watch.
Absolutely. It is completely frustrating to watch. It's frustrating to be there in the middle of something when you are trying to actively promote good education for the kids in the state, and you are met with such resistance to any type of accountability. I mean, we are at 49th and 50th in the nation on reading and mathematics. That's just unacceptable. And, to continue to down the same road, it's not really a sustainable idea. And, we need to address the issues of school and how it needs to be modified, changed, and made to be better for the kids.
Right.
And I love your previous guest, with the school choice. Absolutely. Right. We need school choice. The funding needs to follow the kids because parents have to have that ability and that choice to put their kids into whatever school they want. That should be a universal right for parents to do that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with that. And of course, the problem here is that we're looking at the BSA, we're looking at other things. We're not, we don't have a 70%, used to be a 70% provision in the BSA that 70% had to go into the school classroom. And now they're counting things like IT and administrators as part of the classroom costs. And I mean, there's so many different things here. But again, the accountability and the inevitability of people are making choices and they're leaving with their feet. That's what's happening. So
it's a lot of smoke and mirrors just trying to figure out where they're spending their money. You're absolutely correct, Michael. I mean, did you know that the FEA president, half of their salary comes out of the school district funding for the Fairbanks Education Association?
Oh, I did not know
that. Half of their salary and half of their benefits are paid directly out of the school funding. Why is that? Why are we supporting the Fairbanks Education Association's president when we should be putting that money into the schools to hire more teachers? If we need more teachers, we should be using that money properly.
Well, it's a great question. Education's obviously going to come back this year, Frank. It's obviously they didn't get what they wanted, right? They wanted the 14-16 BSA. They wanted these increases. They wanted everything else. They came around and banged on all your doors in the legislature with the kids, which is shameful. But I mean, they did all that thing. So this is not a dead issue. It's coming back next year. What do you plan to say? What do you plan to do if you go back this next year? What is your thoughts on coming up with education? What's the answer?
Well, we really need a larger majority in the House, and something needs to happen in the Senate. The supermajority they have in the Senate right now is really not conducive to good governance, in my opinion. And we need House and Senate to be able to work at real goals, real legislation that helps facilitate good outcomes for the students. We need to make that accountability clear and for everyone to see. Because we can't continue down the same road of 49th and 50th in the nation for reading and math. It's just not
right. Well, at some point, you have to admit that something is fundamentally broken in the system. And it's obviously not the funding, because the funding has been ever exponentially increasing over the last 50, 60 years. It's been nothing but an upward trajectory. So it's not necessarily the funding that's broken. There's something fundamentally flawed in the system and the way we're doing things. But you talk about that and it's blasphemy. It's just, nobody wants to hear that.
Right.
Let's talk a little bit here about the issue of the PFD, the funding, having some kind of fiscal plan or policy in place. I'll be honest with you, Frank, I'm a little disappointed that we could not get any aspects of the fiscal policy put together. I know Ben Carpenter was working his fingers to the bone in Ways and Means trying to get that stuff out, and we could not get a single piece or component out to get onto the floor. We have no fiscal policy. I mean, the Senate does. Well, it's 25-75. That's our fiscal policy. Well, sure. Well, as soon as the PFD's gone, then what's the fiscal policy? But what is going on in the House? Do you believe in the fiscal policy working group's recommendations? Do you believe we need a fiscal policy plan? We believe we need at least a 50-50 PFD, or is it statutory? Where do you stand on that? Give us your fiscal outlook here.
Well, we absolutely do need a fiscal plan, and that the fiscal policy working group plan had a lot of great ideas in it. And we did come out of the gate in the first year. I mean, Will Stapp had the spending cap companion to Senator James Kaufman spending cap bill. We couldn't get traction with that. That was part of the fiscal policy working group, the spending cap.
Well,
and when you can't even get...
Let me interrupt you here for just a second, and I don't mean to be rude, but one of the reasons why that got submarined was because somebody intentionally slipped the PFD inside that. It was basically a Trojan horse at that point. Yes, the idea of a spending cap is a must-have if we're going to cut down the size and scope of government and make us live within our means. But when you do things like that, where at the last minute they slip the PFD inside the cap and do it really kind of submarined the whole thing, right? I mean, this was not we passed it out and it was great. It was we passed it out, then somebody amended it, and then it became a poison pill.
Well, that happens with all legislation, Michael. We start out with something that may be really good and maybe needs to be modified a little bit, as you work through the process. But when you when you Christmas tree on something onto that bill that completely negates the purpose of the bill, then it all falls apart. And that goes right back to our very slim razor majority that we had, and what happens when you have such a slim majority in the House. You can't it's very difficult to get any kind of real spending cap or constitutional, just like you mentioned Ben Carpenter with the constitutional PFD amendment. We tried to get that through. That sat in the House, on the House floor for many floor sessions and kept getting pushed to the next one, because when we first brought it out, we thought we had 27, and all of a sudden you get down to 26 or you get down to 25 and we can't move it. So we're working hard to try to get these pieces of that fiscal policy working group, but you're met with such resistance, such smoke and mirrors that it's really disheartening.
Frank, I'm sure you've seen the governor's 10-year forecast. I'm sure you probably looked at those as they get updated for every spring and fall and everything, and they come out. What are your thoughts on the 10-year forecast right now, and where we're going? Because I mean, if we continue to take the PFD, which is essentially what's happening now, we're essentially at the 25-75 mark of the PFD. But as you look out 24, 36 months, you see we're running into the deficit cliff. The PFD will be consumed. I mean, am I wrong based on that? I mean, am I wrong that the 100% of the PFD will have to go to government?
That's the way it looks at this point. If nothing changes, the PFD will disappear in a short amount of time. We're probably we could be on the last election before make real policy changes before that PFD is gone. And hold on to the couch here, Michael. I mean, when the PFD is gone, where else are they going to get revenue? Okay,
free rides die hard. You
Yes.
Alaskans, I can tell you right now, you Alaskans, you really need to pay your fair share. I mean, you've been getting a free ride for so long. Free rides die hard. You need to pay your fair share. I can see it. It's coming. That's exactly what it'll be. Some form of taxation, some form. If they're going to get it, they're going to get the money somehow. It's going to come from you. Either they're taxing your PFD or they're going to tax you another way.
It doesn't matter how much money you give that the state government has. They will spend it and they will want more. It's just in the nature, it seems like. And and when you have like a super majority in the Senate and they are pushing things like defined benefits with, basically a blank check. I mean, if you want to come with some kind of retirement reform that you can actually pencil out and have real numbers, but when you want a blank check for things like defined benefits, I mean, not only is the PFD going to be gone, but you are going to be looking at taxes, income, whatever they're going to throw at us, income tax, sales tax to pay for these programs. Remember,
they'll have to tap the permanent fund. That won't just be that will be a constitutional mandate. Some judge will say, you've got this. I know the Constitution says you can't, but they'll break it. They'll bust it because it's a contractual obligation, and that will trump the ability to the inability to tap into the general fund. If we're upside down, they'll take it out of the permanent fund, not the dividend, the fund itself. So
remember, we have a $7 billion deficit on the first go around with the defined benefit.
Exactly. I mean, we're still paying for the last time we did this. All right, Frank Thomaszewski is our guest. We got to go. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio.
Listened to by more staffers in Juneau than any other show because their bosses told them to. And after what they just heard, oh man, they're going to be pissed.
You're a bad, bad man.
The Michael Duke Show.
Because we all know that the answer is more. More. We need more money. We need more. I mean, Frank, come on, you're right. It's Parkinson's principles for government. Parkinson's principle is where, work fills up all the available time for whatever work you have, fills up all the available time. Well, in the government, it's the government spending, basically fills up and consumes every available dollar that's in existence. That's what they want. And we just continue ahead. I mean, it was one of the reasons why you mentioned the spending cap, and it was one of the reasons why I was so upset that Will amended his own cap with this poison pill thing at the very end, because it is the one thing that's going to hold the government. I mean, that's the starting block. Like, that's the foundation of a fiscal plan, is to put us, the first rule is if you're in debt and you're going broke, and the first rule is stop spending. And so you put the spending cap in to say you can only spend up to this much and no further. And then you go backwards from there. But when you start throwing all these things up under the cap, you're like, wait a second, are you really serious about this? And the answer is no, they weren't really serious about it. And that's frustrating. That's frustrating when we're trying to create a plan so that we can move beyond what the next election cycle is.
Absolutely. That's just it. You continue to give state government more money. They're going to blow past any spending cap we could possibly, and just look at our local. I mean, just kind of break it down to local elections too. We had that the borough assembly tried to break our tax cap here in the borough last May. They tried to do that through a special election. And and thankfully the people got out and said, wait a minute, you have money in the bank and you're asking for money that you already have just to break this tax cap. It was unfortunate.
No, and they got their peepees whacked on that deal. I mean, they, like I said, whatever it was, 60%, 60 plus percent said not only no, but hell no. And which is surprising in a special election, especially a special election that's funded, fueled, and put forward by special interests. it's surprising that people showed up, but people are mad. I mean, Frank, at this point, they're so frustrated post-COVID and all this other stuff, and the schools and the monies and the economy, and they're had it up to here, and so we've got to start living within our means. And if we don't, there won't be a PFD, there won't be anything else. The legislature doesn't seem to care about the private economy. And part of that is due to the fact that they are not dependent on the private economy in any way for their revenue. I mean, they're dependent on the oil, and that's kind of all baked in. And then the rest of it just comes from the big draw on the permanent fund. So they don't really care what happens in the private economy. As long as the government economy is paid for, that is the economy to them. Thumbs up, we're doing great. Doesn't matter that people are leaving, losing their homes, businesses are shutting down, people are moving out of state. None of that matters. As long as the government funding is getting on, we're good.
Well, I wouldn't say that nobody cares in the legislature, Michael. There's a lot of people that do care about the private economy. I mean, I've been self-employed for over 20 years. And, I am very concerned with our private economy, and I tried to work hard to get some good economic development. I passed a railroad bonding bill for the Alaska Railroad to redo their port in Seward and add a terminal facility also in Seward. It would have increased the size of cruise ships that could dock there. So you're getting more tourists. They're jumping on the railroad. They're heading to Denali. They're heading to Fairbanks. They're dropping their dollars along the way. And it was that bonding package, $135 million bonding package, was all paid for by the cruise industry themselves. So we had an anchor client ready to go, and it was $135 million for construction, for construction jobs, for long-term jobs. And that's a great thing that I really worked on and got passed through the House and the Senate this year. There was other legislation that people were working on. But, one of the drivers of the economy, obviously, is energy and the cost of energy. And we really need to be focusing on getting the price of energy down in the state also. Well,
that's a whole nother kettle of fish. I mean, I agree with you. We definitely need to do something with it. The question is, well, I mean, you just delved into a 2-hour show on the discussion of energy, because I am not convinced that we don't have a lot of machinations going on behind the scenes between the utilities and the producers to try and get the state on the hook to pay for a big chunk of stuff that they ought to be paying for. And I think we need to get the RCA involved to discuss more about this. But you're right. Energy's been a problem. We've never had the long-term thinking needed for situations like this. The best tree is the one that was planted 20 years ago, not the one that was planted today. And unfortunately, that's where we're at right now. Hold on. We're going to rejoin. Don't jump the gun. We're about to rejoin the radio. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell. Let's do this thing. Here we go.
The Michael Duke Show. Seriously humorous with a pinch of intellect. Sorry. That is humorous. Here's Michael Dukes.
All right, we're continuing now. Frank Thomaszewski is our guest representative running for re-election up in District 34 in the interior. We were just talking about the public versus the private economy and how, and I know I painted with a broad brush in my broad statement there during the break, Frank, where I said it just seems like the legislature doesn't care about the private economy. Now, there are certain legislators that do, don't get me wrong. Rob Myers was really the first one to bring this up and point out that because of the way that Alaska funds its government, there is this divorcing of the public and private economy. They're not connected and tied together. If you're in Oklahoma or someplace, the legislature's got to care about what's happening in the private economy because that's where they get their funding. They tax the private economy to run government. And if the private economy is running in the toilet, they don't get the money that they need. Up here, it's like completely two separate entities. And yes, there have been some good things that can get done to get things rolling, but we've got to be paying closer attention to what's going on in the private economy because otherwise we have what we have right now, which is an exodus from the state. We have a net outflow from the state. Cost of living continues to be higher. The 10-year forecast that we talked about earlier, it's going to be worse. The PFD is going to be gone. The benefits of living in this state will continue to reduce, and that in turn will leave a smaller pool of people to shoulder that burden, which in turn will just accelerate that process. Am I wrong?
No, not at all. We really need to be focusing on the private sector, because that's what's going to drive our economy, and that's what's going to hold the state legislature, state government accountable to the people. Absolutely. We did work on things like the timber industry. We passed legislation for the stamping of timber. So now small mills can actually produce a 2x4, stamp the 2x4 as number 1 or better, number 2 or better, and we can use those. So it's driving economic development. So even someone as small as a small timber sawmill can start producing lumber that can be sold in the state. We need to get to a point where we can start a great timber industry and start exporting some of this. Like the governor talks about, small countries have huge exports of timber. Here we have more land and more timber than most countries in the world, and yet we are hamstrung and not able to produce a real growing timber industry. It's absolutely ridiculous. We need to get past the hurdles that have stopped us and move forward with real economic development on things like timber, on things like rare earth minerals. We have 49 of the 50 rare earth minerals here in Alaska. Why aren't we pushing forward to do that? We need access to things like the Ambler Road access. We need we need access to our minerals, to our oil, and we really need to do that for the state. It's an important thing.
I have to tell you that the libertarian in me just cringes when you talk about the state is given authorization for somebody to buy Alaska 2x4s to use in their own house. And I just want to say, shut the hell up. I'll build my house out of whatever I want. We got to get, it's really, that might be part of the problem, Frank, that we've got to go to the state to beg permission to buy lumber made in the state of Alaska to build our own. Otherwise, the state could crack down on some guy who's just running a sawmill as a hobby, sell me some lumber. I can look at it. Is it good? Is it straight? Is it clean? I mean, what?
But to be able to sell it to commercial buildings, I understand. I'm right there with you, Michael. I pay 200.
When did the government get involved in all that, right? I'm sorry, go ahead. You paid what?
I pay a lot every year for my electrical licenses that I hold. I'm electrician journeyman. I'm electrical administrator, and I pay the state every year for licensing on those. And, the fact is, but we're buying that lumber from places like Canada, from places like Oregon, and it's coming to here and it's stamped because they have the process. And so we need the process so we can turn around and start selling it back to them. Yeah. And stop the money going out of the state and get the money coming back into the state. It'll drive economic development. It'll increase jobs and industry in Alaska. And that's what we really need to be focusing on.
Let's this race that's coming up, you've got your opponents. What sets you apart? What's the reason why, people should be, looking to you? What would you be focusing on if you go back? What are your priorities? Let's talk about those things quickly here.
Well, absolutely. Economic development is going to be a priority. We need to focus on the private sector, get government out of the way, and where we need to get involved so we can allow these individuals and small businesses to succeed and to thrive. I'm going to work closely with the governor on getting our different industries moving, and and focus on things like the energy cost of energy on the rail belt. We definitely need. We've been getting killed in Fairbanks on electric costs for a lot of years, and it's only getting worse. We're up to 30 cents a kilowatt hour now. It is absolutely crushing families, and we have to do something about it. I know we have this grid intertie that's coming from Homer to Anchorage. We need to get that grid intertie to come from Anchorage to Healy, to really put a resiliency in the grid. Our cheapest power here in Fairbanks comes from Bradley Lake, and it has to go through a whole extension cord of different utilities. By the time it gets to Fairbanks, we've lost about 8% of the electricity just through line loss, and we have all the fees along the way. So, that's one of the reasons we are paying such high rates in Fairbanks, and we really need to focus on energy that is cheap and affordable and reliable.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the cheap, reliable, affordable energy is the cornerstone of civilization. It really is, of modern civilization especially, but of civilization in total. And we do need to be looking at this. And we've talked about everything on this program over the last 25 years, everything from long transmission DC lines from the slope or up to the slope or back and forth. I mean, we've talked, micronuclear, Watana, Susitna dams, Terror Lake, all these different, we've talked about it all, but it just seems like nothing ever happens until we reach a crisis point, Frank. I mean, really, and at some point that makes it too late.
Well, we do have, I don't know if you're aware of it, but we do have the first ever micronuclear going into Eielson Air Force Base. That's been approved. It's going through the process. Hopefully it gets done, faster. And so that'll be a great pilot program to introduce around the state. There's villages that could really use something like that. If you had a micronuclear plant like in Galena, can you imagine the savings that those folks would incur by not having to burn diesel fuel generators to power their villages? All along the Yukon River, all in rural Alaska.
Yeah. It was a kilowatt that ran out of fuel one year, and they were freezing to death because they had no fuel and they couldn't get the fuel up there. I mean, you got a nuclear reactor, nuclear battery. It's not a reactor; it's a battery. But if you've got a micronuclear thing, hey, power for days, right? You don't have to worry about it. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I don't want to interrupt you, Frank, but we're down to the last 2 minutes. And so I want to give you a chance, elevator pitch, why vote for you versus your opponents? How do they get a hold of you? Where do they find you? Give me the full rundown here.
Oh, well, absolutely. So, I'm going to work hard, and my record really shows the effectiveness that I've had in the legislature over my first term. Being on the finance committee as a freshman is no small feat. We went into the legislature trying to get those finance seats back to Fairbanks because there was 3 before in the 32nd legislature, and we were able to do that with Mike Cronk, Will Stapp, and myself. And that's an important thing for Fairbanks. We were able to deliver a lot of needed infrastructure, capital projects, and that sort of thing. And it was really a good testimony to working together with the governor and being able to work across party lines, because, when you're in a caucus with many different viewpoints, it's important to be able to work with everyone. As far as my opponent, never heard of her before the day she filed. Looked at the record there, and she was actually not a Republican the day before, or the week before she filed, but then all of a sudden she changed her voter registration and now she's a Republican. So, that just that being your first act with your constituency to say, well, I'm going to pretend to be something I'm really not.
That reminds me
to start.
That reminds me of Master and Commander. They call that the flag of convenience is what they call that. All right, Frank, we're out of time. Frank Thomaszewski, our guest. Folks, thanks for coming in tomorrow's Firearms Friday. We will see you then. Have a great day. Be kind, love one another, live well. I'm sorry, Frank, but we had a hard stop there at the top of the hour. That's what they call the flag of convenience. That's when the ships would just run up the flag. Whatever was convenient to keep them out of trouble or get them not noticed, they would run up the proper flag. And that's why a big chunk of the legislature these days are independents, because, that's more palatable than progressive Democrat or whatever else they wanted to say there.
Well, the data has her as a hard Democrat. So
Yeah.
When you look at the difference, you've got a conservative Republican versus a hard Democrat. That's what that really boils down to. And the other funny thing is, on her website, her biggest lobbying point, where she has come down actually to lobby the legislature for defined benefits. That's her main sticking point. That's what she's lobbied for at the city. She's lobbied at the state for defined benefits, but you will not find defined benefits on her website. At least when I checked it and I snapped the pictures, wasn't even on her priority list. So,
right.
The first two things you do is you pretend to be somebody you're not, and you don't even show or talk about what your true goal is. So, that's the big difference between me. I'm honest. I have integrity. I will tell you the truth. And so I appreciate the ability to come on here, Michael. And I hope you ask some hard questions when she ever comes on your show.
Oh no, I saw some of the testimony that she had given and some of the things that she had talked about, and so I too was a little surprised that she showed up as a Republican, because I had seen some of the testimony before and I recognized her because the name Cottle is the same as my friend Bert Cottle, who was the mayor of so I recognized the name, and I was like, anyway. Yeah, no, there's going to be some questions. She's been invited on the program. Maybe she'll show up. Maybe she won't. But the invite has gone out. We'll see what happens. And no, Susan, I don't think it's defamation, because he's just saying what is on the website. So, what do you want to do? All right, we're out of time. Frank, a website address for you, or Facebook? Where do we go?
Yes, I have a website, Frank, the number 4 Fairbanks at .com, frank4fairbanks.com. You can find me on Facebook. Frank Thomaszewski for Fairbanks is my campaign, and you can find me there. But you could call me 907-347-2968. Poor Susan, she's an interior Democrat. She follows me around to wherever I go. God bless you, Susan. We appreciate you. But you are, I know where you come from for an interior Democrat.
It's not a non-biased opinion. Susan's been popping into the program for a while now. And, like I said, it's always interesting to have a counterpoint. That's all I can say at this point. And yeah, he's adding opinions. That's fine. Opinions are fine. That's what opinions are about. Defamation has nothing to do with opinions. So I don't think that word means what you think it means. All right. Well, Frank, thank you for coming on board and joining us this morning. We appreciate it. We will we'll catch you later. Thank you for being part of it.
All right. Thank you, Michael.
All right. Okay, folks, that brings us up to the end of the show today. I've had about enough of what I can handle for this morning. We got more coming up. Tomorrow is Firearms Friday. It'll be good stuff. I can't wait to discuss it. Again, the folks from 907 Ammo, Willie Waffle, maybe some talk with John Lott as well. I don't know. We'll see what happens. It'll be fun. It's good. We'll be back then, 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. Don't miss it. Don't miss it. Thank you, my friends. We will see you tomorrow. Have a great day. Be kind, love one another, and live well.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.